For 20 long years, Rick had lived and breathed one vision: to build the first human colony among the stars. A brilliant space scientist, Rick believed that humanity's future depended on finding new worlds beyond Earth. The looming threats of climate collapse, overpopulation, and political strife were only getting worse back home. Leaders dismissed him as a dreamer, but Rick was relentless, securing funding, building alliances, and pushing technological boundaries to get his project approved. Finally, after decades of research and negotiation, his dream came within reach. A deep space probe detected signs of alien civilization far beyond the solar system. This wasn't just any civilization, it was one that had built entire networks of worlds, wielding knowledge and resources beyond anything humans could imagine. Rick knew this was humanity's best shot at securing a place in the galaxy. But he also knew the journey wouldn't just be a diplomatic mission. The interstellar voyage took several years in cryosleep. Rick's ship traversed wormholes and vast cosmic expanses, carrying him far beyond the known reaches of human space. When the vessel finally arrived at its destination, Rick awoke to a galaxy far more complex and dangerous than anyone on Earth had anticipated. The alien system was embroiled in a vicious, ongoing war. Factions battled over territory, resources, and ancient grievances, turning the once grand cities of planets into smoldering ruins. Rick's arrival was met with both confusion and suspicion. The timing of the humans' entry into their conflict made it unclear if he was friend or foe, a useful pawn or a dangerous wildcard. Rick was quickly captured by the most powerful faction in the system, led by a cold and calculating alien known as Barley. Barley was more than just a military commander, he was a tactician, a manipulator, and a visionary who had united dozens of warring species under his banner through both diplomacy and brute force. Yet his grip on the galaxy was slipping. Weaker factions conspired against him, and old allies were growing restless. Even his closest generals had begun to question whether Barley could maintain his iron rule much longer. When Barley first laid eyes on Rick, he dismissed the human scientist as insignificant. But after learning about Rick's background and his ambitions to establish a colony, the leader saw an opportunity. Barley proposed a deal. If Rick could help him win the ongoing war and stabilize the galaxy, Barley would grant him the resources and territory needed to build his human colony. With no other choice and the fate of Earth's future at stake, Rick accepted. The next months were a grueling test of Rick's ingenuity. He wasn't a soldier, but his scientific mind allowed him to see patterns and solutions where others saw chaos. He devised revolutionary tactics, using gravitational anomalies to disable enemy ships, reprogramming alien drones to fight on their side, and coordinating surprise attacks with precision timing. Rick's strategies saved entire fleets from destruction and turned battles that seemed hopeless into decisive victories. With each success, Rick earned the respect of Barley's commanders and soldiers. He fought alongside them, not as a distant advisor, but as an equal on the battlefield. Despite being an outsider, Rick proved himself again and again. His determination and clever thinking not only kept him alive, but also helped Barley gain the upper hand in the war. Their victories came at a cost, however. Rick saw firsthand the devastation the war inflicted on countless worlds. Cities reduced to ash, families torn apart, species brought to the brink of extinction, all of it weighed heavily on him. Yet he kept going, knowing that the survival of the human race depended on the outcome of this war. When the final battle ended and Barley emerged victorious, Rick thought his part in the story was over. He had upheld his end of the bargain. With the galaxy united under Barley's banner, it was time for Rick to build his colony. But Barley had one last condition, a condition Rick had not anticipated. "I'll give you your colony," Barley told Rick, "but there's a price. You must marry my daughter, Nita." The demand left Rick speechless. He had never met Nita before, and marriage had never crossed his mind. His focus had always been on science and survival, not personal relationships. But Barley's terms were non-negotiable. Rick reluctantly agreed, sensing that there was more to this arrangement than Barley was letting on. Soon after, Rick met Nita for the first time. She was unlike anyone he had ever encountered, fierce, sharp, and enigmatic. It didn't take long for Rick to realize that Nita was far more than just the daughter of a leader. She was one of Barley's top agents, trained in espionage and assassination from a young age. She was dangerous, but not in an obvious way. Her beauty concealed a mind as cunning as her father's, and Rick found himself both intrigued and wary. Behind the scenes, Barley revealed to Nita the true reason for the marriage. It was not merely a political union, but a mission. Nita's orders were simple: gain Rick's trust, and when the time was right, kill Barley. The leader believed that his death would mark the end of the old era of bloodshed and tyranny. In his mind, this would usher in a new age of peace, with Rick and Nita at the forefront, leading the galaxy into a better future. Nita, however, found herself conflicted. For her entire life, she had followed her father's orders without question, but something about this mission felt different. The more time she spent with Rick, the more she saw the man behind the scientist. Rick was not like the ruthless commanders or scheming diplomats she was used to. He was kind, hopeful, and driven by a vision of building something lasting and good. As the months passed and the colony began to take shape, Nita's internal conflict grew. She saw in Rick a chance for something she had never known: a life without lies, without violence, without orders. But the shadow of her mission loomed over her every moment. Rick, unaware of the secret burden Nita carried, found himself falling in love with her. Despite the strange circumstances of their marriage, they had grown close through their shared work and hardships. Nita, too, felt the pull of emotions she had never allowed herself to feel before. But she knew that sooner or later, the moment would come when she would have to make a choice: follow her father's plan or forge her own path. The decisive moment arrived one night in the grand hall of the colony, where Barley awaited Nita with quiet acceptance. The room was silent, lit only by the faint glow of distant stars streaming in through the transparent dome above. Barley sat calmly, a ceremonial dagger resting on the table between them. His gaze was steady as Nita approached. "It's time," he said softly, his voice devoid of emotion. "End it, and let the new world begin." Nita's hand hovered over the blade. For her entire life, orders had been the only compass she had known. Every mission, every act, every deception, each one had been part of a grand strategy. But this moment was different. She stood on the edge of a choice that would either shatter or remake everything she believed in. Barley's eyes were unwavering, as if he had already accepted his fate, placing his trust in the inevitability of death to cleanse the past and usher in peace. The weight of the dagger felt strange in Nita's hand. She had wielded many weapons before, but this one felt heavier, not from its physical mass, but from the enormity of what it symbolized. All she had to do was strike, and the story her father had written, the one where he would become a martyr, and she and Rick would build a new world, would be complete. But as she stared at the man who had raised her, the man whose orders had shaped her entire existence, doubts surged like waves crashing against the shore. Would killing him really end the violence? Would a world born from another betrayal be any better than the ones they had fought to destroy? Her heartbeat pounded in her ears. She thought of Rick, of the moments they had shared while building the colony together. His laugh when she explained the alien flora they had cultivated in the colony gardens, the quiet nights spent mapping out the future of the settlement, the way he looked at her not as an agent, not as a tool, but as an equal. Nita knew then that she couldn't follow her father's plan. Killing him would not grant peace. It would only lock her into the same endless cycle of control and violence that had ruled her life and the galaxy for too long. Her decision crystallized in a single, sharp breath. The dagger flashed, but instead of plunging into Barley's heart, it arced toward a figure lurking in the shadows, a general who had been scheming behind Barley's back. With a swift, decisive motion, Nita drove the blade into the traitor's chest. The general staggered, a look of shock frozen on his face as he collapsed to the floor. Barley's eyes flickered with surprise, but quickly settled into something that looked almost like approval. "So, you've chosen your own path," he murmured. "Good." But Nita wasn't done. "This ends now," she whispered, her voice steady but filled with resolve. "No more games, no more betrayals. If we're going to build something new, it starts with honesty." Not with another body in the dirt. Rick entered the hall just as the general's lifeless form hit the floor. His eyes widened in alarm, but when he saw Nita standing tall, the dagger still in her hand, a look of understanding passed between them. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice low. Nita nodded, her expression softening. "I am now." Barley stood slowly, brushing dust from his robes as if the assassination attempt had been nothing more than a minor inconvenience. "The galaxy won't accept peace just because you've chosen it, Nita," he warned. "There will be challenges. Enemies still lurk in the dark, waiting for us to fail." Rick stepped forward, standing beside Nita. "Then we'll face them together. Not with fear or violence, but with something better." Barley raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" "Hope," Rick said simply. Over the following weeks, the colony became a symbol of the fragile new peace. Rick and Nita worked tirelessly to unite the various factions that had once been at war. They held councils, negotiated treaties, and built trust where once there had only been hatred. Barley remained in the background, advising when necessary, but allowing his daughter and Rick to lead the way forward. It wasn't easy. There were countless setbacks. Old rivalries flared up, rogue factions refused to lay down their arms, and some planets resisted the idea of unity altogether. But every time a crisis arose, Nita and Rick faced it together. They built schools, hospitals, and trade networks, demonstrating that cooperation could bring prosperity in ways war never could. Nita found herself growing into a new role, not as a spy or an agent, but as a leader. And with Rick by her side, she discovered something even more unexpected: peace within herself. For the first time in her life, she wasn't living for someone else's plan. She was living for herself and for the future they were building together. Barley watched from afar, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth as the colony flourished. He had been wrong about one thing: his death wasn't necessary to bring about a new era. His daughter had found a better way, one he hadn't dared to believe in. Years passed, and the colony grew into a thriving metropolis, its influence spreading across the galaxy. What had started as a desperate gamble on the edge of war became a beacon of hope, proving that peace was possible even in the darkest of times. One evening, as the twin suns set over the colony, Rick and Nita stood on the balcony of their home, looking out over the city they had built together. The sky was a canvas of purples and golds, the stars beginning to twinkle in the growing dusk. "We did it," Rick whispered, wrapping an arm around Nita's shoulders. She leaned into him, a rare smile playing on her lips. "Yeah, we did." In that moment, the weight of their struggles seemed to lift, if only for an instant. The air was electric with possibility, the kind that only comes when you dare to dream beyond the confines of what was thought to be achievable. They stood side by side, watching the bustling streets below, where humans and aliens mingled freely, laughter and the sounds of commerce blending into a harmonious symphony. "Look at them," Rick said, gesturing toward a group of children playing in the plaza, their laughter ringing like music through the air. "They have no idea how close we came to losing everything." His voice held a mix of awe and pride as he took in the thriving life they had created. Nita's gaze followed his, and her heart swelled with emotion. "We fought hard for this," she replied softly. "And it's not just us, it's everyone. They believed in us." As night descended, the city transformed into a tapestry of lights, with bioluminescent plants and structures illuminated in vibrant colors. The colony had not just become a refuge, it was a living testament to their commitment to coexistence. Rick turned to Nita, seeing the reflection of the city lights dance in her eyes. "What do you think will happen next?" he asked, curiosity tinging his tone. Nita contemplated the question, her brow furrowing slightly as she considered their future. "We still have a long way to go. There are factions out there who don't want to see this succeed. They thrive on chaos and division, but we have something they don't, a vision." Rick nodded, the gravity of her words settling in. "And we won't back down. Together, we can face whatever challenges come our way." Just then, a loud cheer erupted from the plaza, drawing their attention. A festival was underway, celebrating the colony's anniversary. Colorful banners waved in the breeze, and stalls lined the streets, showcasing a myriad of foods and crafts from various species. The laughter and joy seemed infectious, wrapping around them like a warm embrace. "We should join them," Nita suggested, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "We can't just stand here and watch," Rick chuckled, the tension in his shoulders easing. "All right, but only if you promise to teach me how to dance." "I'll need all the help I can get." "Deal," Nita laughed, her spirit infectious. They made their way down to the plaza, immersing themselves in the vibrant atmosphere. The energy was electric, a celebration of unity and resilience. Rick marveled at the diversity around them, species he had only read about, their cultures woven together in an intricate tapestry of colors, sounds, and scents. As they wandered from stall to stall, tasting exotic foods and marveling at the craftsmanship of the local artisans, Nita spotted a group of children gathered around a fire, mesmerized by an elderly alien storyteller. They joined the group, sitting cross-legged on the ground, completely captivated by the tales being spun. Rick leaned closer to Nita, whispering, "It's moments like this that remind me why we fight. It's not just for survival, but for the beauty of life itself." Nita nodded, her heart full as she watched the children's eyes widen in awe. She leaned her head on Rick's shoulder, comforted by his presence. "This is the future we wanted," she murmured, her voice soft yet firm. "A world where children can dream without fear." As the storyteller reached a climactic moment in his tale, the crowd gasped collectively, and Rick felt a rush of gratitude wash over him. He realized how far they had come, how many lives they had touched, and how crucial it was to keep fighting for a future that held promise for all. Later, they found themselves in the middle of a spontaneous dance party, vibrant music filling the air. Rick stumbled awkwardly, trying to mimic the rhythmic movements of the aliens around him, while Nita laughed, her joy infectious. She grabbed his hand, pulling him into the fray, and he surrendered to the moment, letting the music guide him. "You're not half bad," Nita teased, her eyes sparkling with mischief as they twirled in the colorful lights. Rick grinned, feeling more alive than he had in years. "If only my old professors could see me now." As they danced, the sense of community enveloped them, a profound reminder that they were not alone in this fight. Strangers had become allies, and allies had become family. They were all in this together, bound by a common dream. Eventually, they stepped away from the crowd, breathless and laughing, their hands still intertwined. Nita leaned against a railing, looking out at the twinkling lights of the city below. "It's moments like this that make it all worthwhile," she said, her voice thoughtful. Rick squeezed her hand gently, his heart swelling with affection. "And it's just the beginning." With a shared smile, they knew their journey was far from over. They had built a home together, but now they had to protect it, nurture it, and continue the work of uniting their worlds. As they stood side by side, watching the celebration unfold, Rick realized that the foundation of their future was not just built on treaties and alliances, but on the strength of love, trust, and the belief that they could change the galaxy together. Nita looked up at him, her expression earnest. "Promise me we'll always keep this spirit alive," she said, her eyes serious yet hopeful. "Always," Rick vowed, squeezing her hand tighter. "No matter what happens, we'll face it together." With that promise, they turned back toward the celebration, ready to embrace the challenges ahead. And as the stars twinkled overhead, they knew that no matter how uncertain the future might be, they would face it hand in hand, lighting the way for others to follow. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.